here we are at night 2, officially, I guess, of our Blister Summit panels. I'm incredibly excited about this one. We are talking about the future of comps, and we're going to chop it up with some people who know more than a thing or two about the comp game. So I have next to me Carter Westfall, the CEO of Natural Selection Tour. We'll get into it a little bit, but we have been talking quite a bit because, as I hope you have heard, Natural Selection is going down this week in this area. And so we got talking with Carter and Travis Rice, and it was like, hey, would that be cool if Natural Selection happened during the Blister Summit? And I was like, I actually can't think of anything cooler. So that's been happening, and it's been really fun to get to know Carter and work with him on this. Next to him, the man just goes by the name T-Bird, and if you know, you know. It is such a pleasure to have Tom here with us. And Tom and I have been talking, my first opportunity to get to meet him in person, and so this is a lot of fun for me. And then, Gerard, unbelievable, who shows up at these little Blister Summits. I don't know what to say other than Red has been at the top of the snowboard game, is at the top of the snowboard game. Again, we are not worthy, but we are very happy to have you here, Red. And so this is who we're going to be talking to about comps. So thank you all for being here.
Red coming off his X Games.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So as actually Carter just said, well, you say.
No, we're really fortunate to have Red here, who just laced his run at the X Games, won gold, and all really stoked for him and proud of him, and feel really fortunate for Natural Selection to have a competitor like Red a part of our event. And I think it's kind of a segue with Natural Selection, and the original vision of Travis Rice was like, how do we create this kind of all-encompassing snowboard competition that takes Olympians who are winning golds in slopestyle. We got half-pipe medalists with your kind of more traditional big mountain free riders that, like Travis, who's been doing film parts for the last 20 plus years. And I think it's just been, kind of a beautiful combination of the two, to see all the different types of riding and trying to create a format that just really celebrates snowboarding. That's been our goal.
T-Bird, talk about how you got involved with Natural Selection and what you're doing with the event these days.
Yeah, I got involved in, I want to say it was February of 2019, when it was still kind of just, I guess, a deck, right? Then nothing had been cemented in concrete. They hadn't put on any events, and I was part of the kind of mass layoffs at Trans World and Snowboarder at the time, because I didn't live in Southern California, and I got a call from Liam Griffin, who's the chief operating officer, and I think he just asked me, what's your bandwidth? And I was like, oh, funny you should ask. A ton. I have nothing to do right now. And then I think it was just all systems go from there on.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of what you're doing there, I mean, you are handling, there's managing components, there's commentary, right? So did we already spell that out?
It's otherwise known as imposter syndrome. Yeah, I'm a bit of a mutt. I have a weird career where I'm kind of jack of all trades, master of none. I started out writing, then I got into photography, and then I got into announcing. Because of all of that experience I've had in the snowboard industry, I got to know young men like Red here quite well. So I developed some rider relationships, and that's kind of my all-encompassing role at Natural Selection. Yep.
Red, Carter mentioned X Games. Can we ask you about it? How you feel? First of all, how are you feeling now? You good?
Feeling good. Still feeling the night after a little bit, but these are helping. But no, feeling good, and it's nice to kind of get rid of the contest format and get into this free flowing spirit a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get to there though, I want to stay on X Games. Anything particularly different this time around? I mean, do you already feel like this? I'm kind of an old hat at this now.
No, I mean, anything different. It was just, X Games is crazy. It's always the biggest event for me, you know, with the slope style circuit. There's so many eyes on it, and we have so much practice. We have snowmobiles for 3 hours a day for 5 days a week, and then it comes down to this contest day, and there's 10 riders, best in the world, and you're just trying to do your best run. And, you know, this year the course was the best course I've ever ridden personally, and we had maybe the best weather that Aspen's ever had, but that's not true. But it was just an incredible day, and it just felt like everything aligned. I was so honored to be there that day and be a part of it.
So before we start talking about the future of comps, let's talk a little bit about some of the recent past of comps or distant past of comps. The landscape that you saw before natural selection became a thing, you just saw an opportunity there, or it did actually feel like something was missing? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'll speak from a couple perspectives. First, everyone should know, with Travis, I mean, the original natural selection goes back to like 2008. Travis held an event called the Natural Selection. It was like the Quicksilver Natural Selection at Jacksonville Mountain Resort. 2-day competition, 2 different venues. And Travis's whole goal was to kind of combine what you might see in video parts with, with the competition. And it was really successful. I think it was really well received by, the community. I think fans like myself kind of like, wow, like it was something very new and something like, I think what was, for me being just a snowboarder and as a fan, it was very relatable because like Jackson Hole's a place that you go and, you go snowboarding. And the venues were, one of them was on resort, one was kind of boot pack access. So it was very relatable. Like it's harder for me to relate to what Red, and if you didn't see the run, I mean, you got to go check it out. I mean, dude just laced it. But like, I ain't doing that, But whereas, with natural selection or what Travis did, it's that type of terrain that we all aspire to hit. So then Travis did events up at Baldface in 2012 and 2013 and got more exposure. And I was introduced to Travis about 6 years ago through a mutual friend, this guy Kurt Morgan, who directed The Art of Flight, which is an amazing film. Hopefully a lot of you have seen it. And I was just really excited. My background, I worked at the NBA, I worked in the Olympic Games arena, more on just kind of the traditional business side, but I'm a passionate snowboarder. So for me to combine my background, business background, with the passion for snowboarding and being inspired by Travis, I was 100% all in. I think from a fan perspective, it fills a void. And for T-Bird, who's part of the core industry, and I'd be curious from Red, from an athlete's perspective, like how they see natural selection perhaps filling a void that wasn't there before.
Yeah, I think it's from my perspective, as Carter said, I'm pretty core snowboarder. I pay attention to the mainstream, but I would consider myself part of the snowboard industry, like really woven into the fabric of it. And I think the biggest benefit that natural selection has had with a lot of the riders, it's kind of a twofold thing, right? Like you take Gerard Elston, came to Jackson in 2021, had a couple sponsors that paid him pretty well, but he was a very core snowboarder who wouldn't really have the opportunity to be seen by millions of people riding in his element because he's filming video parts. And I mean, unless that video part goes viral on YouTube, his exposure is going to be a little bit more limited. He gets second place at Jackson Hole and like boom, off to a different stratosphere. And likewise, someone like Red, snowboarding loves to put people in a box. We've always loved to put people in a box. He's a rail rider, he's a park kid, she's a pipe girl, whatever it is. Someone like Red can go win X Games, and now he has the opportunity to come to natural selection, do well, and people are like, holy shit, this kid isn't just a park rider. You know what I mean? It's opened up the competitive genre of snowboarding to give a broader audience a new perspective on what the core really loves to see.
Oh yeah, I really couldn't agree more with what just got said. But for me, it's just the difference. I've been doing slopestyle snowboarding for so long now. It's the same old thing every year the same thing. And every time I do natural selection, I show up and I try not even to look at, these guys do a great job of sending photos of the venues and all that. But I'm like, I'm not even going to look at anything until we get to the scout day. And that's just something you don't see in slopestyle snowboarding. It's, everything's planned. You can almost show up and know your run before you even get there. And for me, I don't know if, throughout this week, whenever we run the contest, if I'm going to do a straighter or if I'm going to do a front seven. It's just, for me, that's the fun value to it. And then also getting to compete with people I don't get to compete with is a huge one for me. Competing with the Gerard or last year competing against Travis Rice.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty special for any snowboarder. So
I think I'd be curious maybe to ask you, Red, and you're obviously at the top of the game. It seems like with half pipe slope style, and you see it with skiing too, it's becoming more and more like specialized. Like it's just, it's harder. Like younger and younger, and you've seen guys like Ben Ferg or some of the other competitors in natural selection that you guys love to snowboard, so it's like seems like a natural evolution to want to be out in the backcountry and shredding POW and having fun and.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way it's gone, I feel like, for so long. You start off doing these slopestyle contests until, you're 25 to 30, it seems like, and then at a certain point your body, it gets exhausted riding those slopestyle courses. A lot of the time they're flat landings and all that, and that's the cool part about natural selection. You said Jared Elson, but I think of Dustin Craven every single time, Dustin Craven, no offense to him, but I mean, his career, I would probably say he was on the same path of like, I'm winding down. I might just become, just the rider that goes out in the backcountry and has fun. And now you look at him, he's a star in natural selection. And, he's someone that I would be absolutely terrified to go up against in natural selection, and someone that I hope I don't have to.
Pick your poison.
So staying on this for a minute, I mean, when we're talking about operating at the absolute highest level, man, it's hard enough to do that in one discipline, right? Mm-hmm. But now I love hearing this and talking about we are putting athletes in boxes, and this is an opportunity to push back against that. But I would love to hear you guys talk a little bit more about maybe one of the questions is, how often, of course, without naming any names, might you reach out to somebody who you think, oh, he or she would be really interesting in natural selection, and they're like, dude, I just got to stay focused on the discipline I'm in, right? Like, how you want me to go operate at the highest level in this pretty much completely opposite type of event? How often do you see that? Or is it more like riders are just thrilled to get out of that box?
I would say, first and foremost, in order to receive an invite to natural selection, you have to have the footage that backs it up. Uh-huh. Like, you have to have the backcountry footage to prove that you can kind of hang in this arena. But I will say, with some of the competitive snowboarders in Olympic years, that has happened, where we've hit them up and said, hey, do you want to do this? And they're like, listen, I'm training for the Olympics. I got to get this thing done because the Olympics is huge. There's no doubt. I mean, ask this guy. And with all due respect, we're like, yeah, absolutely, go do your thing. Yeah. But 9 times out of 10, they'll hit us back and say, hey, here's my footage. I'd like to come be a part of this. I would say the majority of riders are pretty thrilled when they receive that invite to ride on natural selection.
For sure. On my end, I can say it's one of the hardest things to come by. And I wish it was easier, but I don't know if it would make the contest that it is now. But yeah, as a rider's perspective, there's not many people turning down a natural selection invite, if any. It's just such a unique thing, and like you were saying, I really respect the way that natural selection does it. Where like, you do have to film a video part to get into it. You can't just be this person that just does, this famous slopestyle big air rider that just does that, and all of a sudden here's your dinner plate, try riding in the backcountry against Craven and Travis and all that. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard, and it's a cool invite system.
Well, and I feel like, in turn, we wouldn't want to necessarily do that to a rider, right? Say we took a slopestyle rider who was the best in the world at slopestyle, but had rarely ridden powder. We wouldn't want them to go up against Travis Rice because they're not going to be portrayed in the best light. So our big thing is we kind of tell the riders, like, hey, take a season, take some AVE classes, get in the backcountry, film everything, and send it to us every year. And that's kind of the natural progression of like how you make that leap from competitive slopestyle or half-pipe riding into the backcountry, like responsibly, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, and I know from Travis's perspective, when it comes to like the venue that we're selecting or, trying to have the best conditions, I mean, his goal is always to create a canvas that the riders, something that can really just showcase their abilities for them to have fun and just like show off their talent. And I think there's an interesting kind of dynamic we have with natural selection. Yes, it's a competition. Yes, these are competitors, and Travis is as fierce a competitor as anyone. But I don't know. It's almost like a community celebration of sorts. Like we're going to places like Valdez, Alaska, or whether it's here in Crested Butte or up at Revelstoke, and it's just the competition is one element of it, but it's like something bigger, And I'd encourage any of you to come up to Revy to experience the week. It's just this great. That's what I've enjoyed about it the most, is kind of building of the relationships and getting to know the riders, and just like it's intense. Like I know it's intense for the riders. Like there's nerves, but it's also hopefully something bigger than that, right?
I'm going to start opening up a few questions that might have something to do with skiing and snowboarding. I'm curious, with competitions, if, as Red just said, he's like, hey, if there's a rider who gets an invite, that is a big freaking deal. We'll keep this on snowboarding for a sec, but what kind of impact do we think this might have on snowboarding in general, right? Do we think that when you're seeing the best in the world coming in and operating on a sort of big natural course rather than a manufactured course, are we seeing, or is there potential here for this to open up young people getting on a board for the first time, and maybe they are going to be less inclined just to be in the park, or less inclined just to be riding all mountain, you know what I mean? Like, is this having an impact? I'm curious just your perspective on that. Go. Yeah.
My perspective, for sure. Like I'm lucky enough to run this Red's Backyard Foundation that works with a lot of resorts and stuff, and whether we like it or not, we're not getting the same snow years and all that.
Yep.
Mountains are still opening at the same time, so just getting out there and riding the mountain is pretty similar to the natural selection vibe, and everyone starts on the mountain. They don't start right in the park right away. So I mean, almost in a way, you're kind of starting in that natural selection route a little bit more. And when you go to Utah and stuff, I know a group of small rippers there that I don't even know if they even hit jumps. They go to snowbird and they jump off cliffs, and that's their game right there. So I would say yes to answer your question.
Yeah, and I feel like natural selection has, we're now in our 4th year, and I feel like people see it, kids coming up, and they're like, oh shit, I don't have to do slopestyle USASA contests if I don't want to. I can film a powder part, put it on YouTube, and maybe it's going to be seen by a local rep, and he'll flow me boards. I mean, there's like a whole crew of up-and-coming young kids. You take like Matteo Masidi up in Revelstoke, right? Like, he doesn't need to go do a slopestyle event for people to know who he is. Sean Miskimen, Bryn Alexander. I mean, the list is growing and growing and growing, where before, 10, 15 years ago, there was no path to professional snowboarding without going through the USASA local circuit. Yeah. And I feel like now kids are seeing that there is a path to becoming the next Blake Paul, or becoming the next Jared Elston, or hell, Travis Rice, who knows? It's opened up kind of a new neuro pathway in snowboarding and kind of burrowed into the subconsciousness. And I think that's probably been the biggest impact that I've seen.
That's what I was hoping you'd say, but I didn't know if that's what you'd say. But I think that's just cool, right? Opening, I like that, neural pathways, more opportunities, more ways to get there, opening up the imagination. And I think that's pretty powerful. I like that. Thoughts on this? You in agreement with these guys?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's important that with natural selection, like, we just want to create something that's additive to the sport. Like, we're not trying to compete with things like the X Games. Like, it's all good. It's all like hopefully inspiring people to want to go out and snowboard or or even ski for that matter. I mean, I think like part of our secret sauce is, we always like to say Mother Nature's the main character. Like, we don't know what the conditions are going to be like. Like, Red's going to have to deal with it. Yeah. But also, like, if you look at our content, we're up in Alaska, or whether it's year one in Jackson Hole when it was just crazy powder conditions. Like, it's beautiful to watch. I mean, we've got race drones that are following the riders. We've been live streaming from race drones, like, using the latest technology. It's like watching Planet Earth meets a snowboard competition. So, like, my 82-year-old father, he's biased, he's going to watch it, but, like, you don't have to be a snowboarder to enjoy the content we're putting out. And as we look to other sports, and we've started to dip our toe into mountain biking. We partnered with one of the original visionaries of Red Bull Rampage, and we're looking to potentially do an event in New Zealand where, once again, like, it's the sickest venue, like, with, outside of Queenstown. Like, it would just be a beautiful thing to watch. And so, no one's going to Beijing probably because they saw the half pipe competition in the Olympics. However, like, I think there's probably a lot of people who are like, damn, I want to go out to the Tordrillos in Alaska, having watched, what went down there in years 1 and 2, or, hopefully wanting to go to a Revelstoke, or with duels here, like wanting to come check out Crested Butte, right? I mean, it's just, like I said, like, it's kind of like Mother Nature's the main character with all this. And I'll say, in connection with that as well, when I first met Travis, I mean, I was pretty impressed with his commitment to, like, hey, I want to use this platform, the eyeballs that we're going to get, is, use this as a platform to in a kind of entertaining way, to kind of weave in educational components of our own sustainability in the environment. Like, let's use the competition as a way to, like, celebrate Mother Nature, and without hitting people over the head on environmental issues, but, like, let's weave it in. And we've got partners like Yeti, who's very committed to sustainability, or Arc'teryx, which is doing some really cool stuff with their gear. A lot of all companies these days have some sort of a sustainability angle, but I'd like to think there's probably 4, 5, 6 of our partners who are really, really committed to it. It's great for us to be able to, weave their stories within the broadcast, because we do all these kind of little features within the show that bring these to life.
All right, this is your fault. You opened the door. You mentioned mountain biking. Door's open. Skiing, you've heard of it.
I mean, look, there's a great crossover. It's very obvious. And, snowboarders are friends with skiers. I mean, Travis, we've definitely received a lot of, like, inbound comms of, like, hey, like, we would love, from leading kind of filmers in the ski world, we'd love to see something like this, under the Natural Selection umbrella. Whereas we do not have any firm plans at this stage. I mean, it's like, cool, like, if we have the right athletes, like the leaders who are kind of guiding this thing and authoring it, because we want it to be distinctive, we want it to be a true representation. It's not going to be T-Bird or or Red necessarily. It'd be the leaders there. Then fantastic. We also want to, like, this all started with snowboarding, so we want to respect that. Like, I think there's a place, if we're thinking of Natural Selection as this kind of all-encompassing brand for, different outdoor sports to have their own seat at the table. I mean, a lot of it just takes time and money and resources. It's been, I'm mainly focused on the business side of this. We launched Natural Selection in February 2021, which was right in the middle of the pandemic, and we're fortunate to have a partner like Yeti and their CEO say, look, I've seen what Travis has done. I know what you guys, what you're trying to achieve, and it's going to be really special if you pull it off. And they had the faith to kind of come on board. And but it's it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift financially when you're trying to live stream from some of these places, let alone post produce. We run a really lean crew, and but it's worth it at the end.
All right, this one's for T-Bird and Red. And if I could deliver truth serum at any point during the summit, I'd want to do it right now. I want this honest answer. This whole thing, Carter mentioned, skiers and snowboarders are friends. We've also had a lot of years where it's like skiers over there, boarders over there, right? Folks that have listened to a few Blister podcasts maybe know that I hate that. But here's the truth serum part. I think it's a far more interesting world to continue to completely blur those lines, blow that up. Push back on that. Are we in agreement on this, or are you like,
I rode Mammoth 2 days ago with Chris Ben Chetler and followed him around, man. I'm a skier fan.
So
Skier snowboarder beef is dead. It is.
This-
It's gone.
Here's
it's like
here's
stupid.
here's my anecdotal evidence. I just got a lot more from Red Gerard. The best in the world at snowboarding, I have never heard one of them be like, skiers. Mediocre snowboarders, I have heard have a lot of beef with skiers. I've heard a lot of skiers before skiers get too proud here, a lot of skiers have said dumb shit about snowboarders, right? But at the highest levels, I have heard, just anecdotal, but I've heard none of it. And Red is another one who's like, dude, I was just skiing with Chris. So I don't know. I think but this is why I want truth serum. I didn't want you to just agree with me unless you fully agree with me, in which case, yes.
No, it's, one of my favorite snowboarders on planet Earth currently is Sean Pettit. I think that dude's like the dopest snowboarder and skier in the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like snowboarding went through that rebellious stage, right? Because fucking Mad River Glen and Alta and Deer Valley and whatever that was back in the day. And for whatever reason that still held over, like, what do we give a shit? Skiers are dope, snowboarders are dope. Being in the mountains in winter or summer or spring or fall is dope. And I feel like snowboarding has matured enough because we've finally been around long enough to where we're kind of realizing that, like, hey, we love to do what we do. Why are we going to shit on anybody else who loves to do what they do, especially if it takes place in a similar venue?
Yeah.
I got to push back a little bit.
Okay.
I was at Jackson, my home mountain, just minding my business, headed to the lift, going down one of these cat tracks. I'm just kind of weaving. I hear by me, on your right. And this dude's skiing like jeans or something like.
This is my point.
I'm like, dude, man, like, chill out. I'm not gonna I'm not some whack. No, I'm just kidding. But it was all good.
No, see, I
It
think
was-
a lot
it
of
could have been a
Wait, did you
snowboard.
make up that whole thing?
No, it really happened.
Okay.
Kinda
This is
pissed
my
me off,
point,
but it's
though.
okay.
I think a lot of the hate generates from the mountain, honestly. Like, a lot of the skier, snowboarder beef, I think, generates from the park. I'll get angry at skiers in the park, they'll get angry at me. But then once you go out into the mountains, you start to respect people's knowledge. And skiers have great knowledge out there, and so do we. And it's like, once you get out there, I think things just start to communicate a lot better. But that also could just be me getting older, and I rode a lot more park when I was younger, and probably a lot more aggro a little bit. So no, whatever.
I mean, and Red mentioned Chris. We're up at Revelstoke. Sammy Carlson's around. Dude is like a beast, right? I mean, how can you not like see what he's doing and just be like, holy cow, it's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's open this up. Audience questions. Yes.
Oh, it's just been so cool. It's been so cool to hear your guys' perspectives. I'm a skier, been a pro skier for like 10 years. And
I'm a big fan of yours, by the way.
thank you. I'm a big fan of you guys. And like, Anyways, I think it's so cool what Natural Selection is doing. Like, I love it so much. And I have this question around like the progression of the sport and the soul of the sport. And I feel like when a sport makes it in, like, for example, when skiing made it into like park and pipe, oh, now it's an Olympic sport. It really changes the soul of the sport. And I think what's really cool about natural selection is that it keeps like what I love about snowboarding so much is like your guys' soul and your style has never left. And like changing, like riding with snowboarders always changes how I look at the mountain. And like to your point, Jonathan, like riding with pro snowboarders has like profoundly shaped me, and I love it so much. And some of my most favorite people to ride with are pro snowboarders, because I'm like, I never would have thought of like slashing it like that, or using the angle in that way, or riding the trees in that way. Like it has helped me so much. But yeah, there's like this element that I see. I came back from kind of living on a boat for 2 years and found out that like the Free Skiing World Tour, Free Ride World Tour is now partnered with FIS. And I'm going to, maybe a lot of people won't agree with me, but I was fucking bummed because I was like, man, I raced, until I was 19 at a super high level, and like the level of seriousness, and like it's cool that we can make it to these upper echelons in the sport, and it progresses the sport in a certain way, but it also takes out like the rebelliousness or the freedom or like the place that it serves us deeply inside ourselves. And what I think is so cool about natural selection is you're like capturing the soul, you're also letting it progress, and you've done this really magical thing with combining the two. And so I guess my question is like, I'm curious your guys' perspectives on how do we hold on to that soul as we need to make money, right? Like it's really expensive to like run these competitions. Like Yeti was like, yo, I believe in you. Like here's a bunch of money. Good luck. And Travis nailed it. You guys nailed it, which is so cool, but it's a risk. And so as we're in capitalism, as we need things to be funded, as we're trying to like hold on to the sport that we all love so much and also need to pay for it and need to like deal with progression or whatever it is. I'm just curious your guys' thoughts on that. So thanks. That was a very long question, but thanks, guys.
Yeah, on the Olympic thing, personally, I feel like snowboarding has been really lucky in maintaining our soul, because I think just coincidentally and luckily for snowboarding, the people that have won or done very well in the Olympics have just been like the dopest humans. From like Red wins gold, that's so good for us. Mm-hmm. Sage wins gold, Jamie wins gold. Those are the characters that we want the mainstream to see. And I think, Danny Cass back in the day, and JJ Thomas and Ross Powers and the American sweep, like that changed everything. I'm personally a big fan of the Olympics, but I'm biased only because I want to see my homies get paid. I love seeing my homies get paid. It's the best thing in the world, aside from me getting paid. But I do feel like, in turn, I wish that the companies that bought into snowboarding for those events wouldn't just come around every 4 years. Mm-hmm. I wish they would stick around for the long haul and like have our backs. Yep. But if you're just going to pay my homies, I'm down. Super down.
Red, thoughts on anything Angel was?
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more, really. And I'm not informed enough, really, to talk about the FIS and the Free Ride World Tour or whatever. But in the partnership thing, I have been a part of that, and I've ridden for a lot of those Olympic companies. I mean, hell, I rode for Chipotle, which was insane. It was the coolest thing ever, And if I could keep that going for ever, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I don't know. On the Free Ride World Tour and all that, I might hand it on over a little bit.
Yeah, we obviously took note of it. I think look at it as potential opportunity. We have. We feel like we've got a very strong kind of moral compass when it comes to, preserving the soul of the sport. And it really comes down to because we genuinely want whatever we're doing to kind of come from the athletes. And not only Travis is like, this is not my tour. I mean, of course he started, but like we do as much as we can to get the feedback from the riders, how are you feeling, like, you know, and I think that's really critical. And I think if we can unlock that kind of same ethos in other sports, and there's something unique that we can build. Like, me personally, like, I've worked in the Olympic Games arena, I've worked for the NBA. Like, we're not trying to build Natural Selection into like a traditional sports governing body. Like, we're trying to create a unique kind of brand platform that can, support that soul. And I think, Angel brings up a good point. Like, it's expensive, and like, we've got to like think outside the box in terms of like how we kind of like who we partner with and how we pay for it. We do want to get some more non-endemics on board, because a lot of them, they do have the checks. But I think because of, once again, going back to kind of, Mother Nature's the main character. Like, we're gonna, when we put out this edit, it's gonna be a phenomenal marketing showpiece of this region. And I think getting more, tourism departments and the resorts themselves. I mean, we did one in Japan in an area called Miyoko, and there's a group that's investing $1.5 billion in terms of blowing out that area and making it really amazing. And it's like, wow, that could be a phenomenal strategic partner, because we could put a huge spotlight on a place like that. And so, I think there's different ways to kind of like preserve the sustainability of this from a business model standpoint. And then there's just so many moving pieces on the media landscape. I think production costs, we're getting more efficient. I think when we look at what we're building with Natural Selection, the opportunities around original content. So if we look at the competitions that's kind of being our tempo, like, I know, like, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see what like Red's up to, like non-competition side. Like, these are just very interesting, awesome people in the community around snowboarding or big mountain free skiing. Like, it's super rad. And so, for those of you that are F1 fans and seeing the impact of like Drive to Survive, and like, I think every sport's trying to figure out what their Drive to Survive is, and we're out there like trying to do the same. But like, I know as a fan, like the snowboarding culture is so rad. Like, I just want more. Like, I want to see what's going on, on more of the, like, the lifestyle stuff, and whatnot. And I can tell you, like, when we're up at Baldface for the competition, or out in Valdez, all the hijinks and kind of companionship that's going on there, it's all just like, it'd be amazing content. Like, how do we capture this more and bottle it up and share it with the world? Because I think it'd be really compelling. I don't know. Sorry, that was a long-winded.
Also, speaking more on that, I was just in Mammoth for 4 days, and the contest got canceled. Like, we had 4 days to run qualifiers and finals, so that's 2 days each. And that's something, what do we have, 7 days here to run a window? That's just something, I don't mean to harsh FIS too much, but it's just something that we deal with in the contest industry. And I don't know how that's going to work with Freeride World Tour, or even how that does work, but that is something that works good with Natural Selection, is having that window. We're do this winter sport where you'll go 10 days in a storm, like, you need those windows. And that's where you see in the slopestyle contest, really bad riding in finals when it's windy and you have 45-mile-an-hour gusts and stuff. So it's like, those windows are really important. And I think having an outside perspective like Natural Selection to come in and look at that is really important and cool for me to see, at least.
Yeah. Very cool. Yes.
So when speaking of the greats in the sport, and I know this is a future of comps kind of sport, but kind of looking back on it, what would your guys' like, considering it's duels, top 4 all-time riders being in Natural Selection? So like Terje or Torstein or Danny Davis or like any of these guys, what would your top 4 riders be to see in those like Final 4 spots?
This is a direct conflict of interest for me. As rider liaison, I plead the 5th.
For me, I mean, you mentioned a couple. I mean, Terje, Craig Kelly. I mean, there's just the list really goes on when you start thinking about it. It's really hard to pinpoint 4. But yeah, I mean, Terje, Craig Kelly, Lonnie Kolk,
Mark Frank Montoya.
That'd
be dope.
Sure. Be insane.
Yeah.
Are we talking like still doing it? Like current pro?
Historic.
Okay. I got you. I'm going to go MFM, Craig Kelly, head-to-head. I'm going to take those two head-to-head. And then the other semifinal, I'm going to go... Yeah, probably Nicholas Mueller. Controversial,
Mueller,
hot
sure.
take.
Let's just chill on it.
Don't-
Let's chill on it, all right?
But just
Mueller.
riding style and skill, I would have to probably go Nico. And I would pair him up with, Damian Sanders. Hard boots and all. I think that'd be dope.
Like it. You weighing in on
The-
that?
Nah, I won't weigh in. These guys are the experts. But I do agree with the Terrier. I would
Yeah.
really love to see that. Who knows?
So I wanted to ask what you guys think bringing the duels into the competition adds, and what you see like looking down the road when you're thinking of expanding. Because duels was added like 2 years ago, is that right? And then kind of as you're looking down the road, what additional things do you think you could bring that would add some stuff to the competition?
I can start with that. I mean, duels was a bit of an evolution. In year 2, we were up at Baldface, and on the non-competition days, Travis was really kind of pushing the crew, like, let's do these sweet duels. Like, we're here at Baldface. Like, let's take advantage. We got filmers. We got the best riders in the world. So we picked out different zones at Baldface and held these duels as kind of like bonus content. And in year 3, Jackson Hole, unfortunately, kind of walked away. I mean, and so all of a sudden we needed to like plug in like what is going to replace Jackson Hole, because we had 24 competitors there. And the reason, just not to get too much down the wormhole, I mean, running a big event like this, like we're doing up at Revy this year, like it's a huge stress on a mountain operations, right? And when Jackson Hole was closing down terrain, I mean, I went to lunch one day and the CEO is out bussing tables because like to show her colleagues like I'm in it too, because like it's just so strapped on resources, so it's not too harsh on them, but like we had to come up with a solve, right? So we had done the duels at Baldface, and so we created 12 duels last year as a qualifier then for the Revelstoke event and the Alaska event. And I think what we found is like, this is pretty sick. Like, how do we pull on the thread a little bit? Strategically, it enables us to start building relationships with some resorts like Crested Butte Mountain Resort, or the folks at 11, or this group in Miyoko, or we just filmed one in Andermatt Resort in Switzerland. And so it's a like really, I think, good way of like starting to build a relationship with some of these resorts, because to go from like 0 to like 24 competitors going somewhere is like really, really difficult. But you start to get to know the ski patrol, the operations, like credit to Crested Butte Mountain Resort and the folks at 11, they have so many people involved, even though this is really boils down to like a 1 or 2 day kind of like film shoot, but it's like all hands on deck, right? But I think it's like, how do we get creative? How can we scale our content? And I think duels is one way. And who knows, maybe like duels become kind of this, if we're doing like 3 major events, then it becomes more of a straight qualifier and gives visibility to more riders. So we admittedly have been building the airplane while flying it. That's like a very overused phrase. And we don't like pretend like we're doing our best. Like, we're in year 4, every year's been different. But there's also some beauty, at least, from my perspective, in testing new things and learning, and some things will work out well, other things don't. And, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. This might be a weird open question, but what is y'all's vision for the progression of the sport? Is it doing bigger and badder stunts off of bigger features, or is it going to more remote places, or is it human-powered adventures into some of these venues? What do you all see as the future in these competitions and things like that? No, that's probably vague, but...
I mean, I can only speak like for myself. I can't speak on behalf of the company, but personally, what gets me stoked is like snowboarding has swung so far in a certain direction, especially in like that slope style realm and half pipe realm, where you're talking about like triple corks and quintuple stuff. What currently is like really stoking me out, and what I think is going to continue to fuel the regular, everyday, stoked snowboarder at any given resort in the world is the more relatable on resort stuff, but like as a spectacular act. Like take, for example, like what Arthur Longo does with like side hit Euphoria. It's relatable content at like a super elite level. And I think that's the best path towards sustainability. Not saying there's not room for the huge stunts in like remote places. And of course, foot powered is like highly important to our culture. But I think personally, to keep everyone stoked and motivated and engaged in what we're doing, I think it's kind of like the relatable on-hill stuff taken to like a more extreme level, personally.
Brad?
Oh, Bird, you said that great for sure, but also just agreeing, like, you know, natural selection is just something different than, like, I want slopestyle to stay around. I'm still not done with that. I want to keep competing. I want to still put together runs and do all that stuff. Foot powered for me might hit a lot of you guys. I don't like hiking though, so I hope it don't go there. But yeah, just saying it there. Yeah, I like a little throttle therapy, you know, get on the snowmobile a little bit.
Carter?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Bird. Like, I would love for, you know, tens of resorts or 100 resorts out there having like a natural selection zone, you know, like that would be amazing. And we've got the best riders on the planet who could kind of help shape that. You know, if you think of Tiger Woods out there building golf courses. I think progression, love to see diversity, more diversity. We're seeing it, you know, in snowboarding. I'd love to, you know, have that become, you know, part of our progression. Same thing on the women's side. Admittedly, like up at Revelstoke, we're gonna have 24 male, 16 male, 8 women. Would like to get that to an equal field. A lot of that just comes down to just, I mean, how many competitors you can have and resources, et cetera. But there's no excuse why we shouldn't, right? Admittedly. I think international too. I mean, we had a Japanese rider, Raibu, compete in our Japan duel, which was awesome. He's just an amazing personality. He was also in we did a kind of a side day called a super session up at Revelstoke last year, if you haven't seen it. Really enjoyable, and he was a part of that. So I'd love to see us on like every continent, you know. So those are some of the things when I think of progression, beyond just like more tricks or whatever.
Yeah.
And then just kind of one more thing that came to mind is like relatable and affordable ways to ride a snowboard. Like kudos to Red for what he's got going with like Red's Backyard. We need more of that stuff. Like easily accessible and highly affordable ways to ride your snowboard, I think is like pretty clutch too for people who don't live near a resort maybe, or don't have the means to come to the resort or buy a season pass. We just need to make it like more accessible to more people.
And on that, I guess personally, I think you've all touched on this. Let's try to get all of that, right? Let's make the more accessible videos, events, comps. Let's have pinnacle comps where it is just kind of that mind-blowing element. I don't know why we need to sort of say this is just the thing we're doing now. I think having listened to this conversation, I'm just excited about all the different ways we could continue to spin these things out, you know? And I love that Angel brought up just the economics of this. That's very real, you know? But I think that to open these sports up and be celebrating the more ordinary, the way I think of it is kind of like these platonic ideals of ordinary riding, right? By the absolute best. But the stuff where it's like, I could kind of do that. And then you're seeing stuff where it's like, I could never do that. Like, I want both of that to exist in these, I want to see that. I want these comps, these films to exist and run that spectrum. And if, as we're sitting here talking about the future of comps, I guess maybe that's one of my personal wishes of like all of that, you know? So on that, I want to say thanks to all of you. I love this topic, and we've been talking about this for a while, and I think all we did today was kind of crack open that conversation a bit. And thrilled to have the three of you here to crack that conversation open with.
Thank you, Jonathan, and want to thank all of you for listening. I did want to just special thanks to Crested Butte Mountain Resort and the folks at 11. They've been amazing. We've also got a couple Natural Selection crew members in here. Rick Ross, you got to stand up. Yeah. Rick's base here has been instrumental on these duels, and then Tiffany Cooks here, who really spearheads our marketing and our brand of Natural Selection.
Stand up, Tiff. Come on.
Yeah.
Stand up.
And you might see some Natural Selection Rivians cruising around town this week, so check those out. Little foreshadowing of what the male and female winner up at Revelstoke may win come mid-March, so we'll see.
Thanks
Well,
for
hey.
having us.
Thanks to all of you. I hope we can continue this conversation. Good luck this week, and excited to keep tabs on all of it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.